Hi, my name is Marinda Summerton, and on this channel I address abuse and especially narcissism and the codependent or empath. So if you're new to this channel and you want to live a life free from abuse and want to know more about the topic of abuse, please scroll down to the bottom and hit that red subscribe button. Right, so the word abuse is really a loaded word. As a verb, it means to use something to cause a bad effect or a bad purpose. To misuse, misapply, misemploy, mishandle, exploit, pervert, or take advantage of another person. Another verb for abuse is to treat a person or an animal with cruelty or violence, especially regularly or repeatedly. In other words, to mistreat, maltreat, ill-treat, ill-use, misuse, or to treat badly. For instance, dog owners who abuse their dogs by kicking them or not feeding them. A last verb for abuse is to speak in an insulting and offensive way to or about someone. To insult, to be rude to someone, to swear at a person, to pronounce a curse over someone, to call someone names, to taunt a person, and to shout at a person. For instance, if you were to say the old lady was abused by the orderly who insulted her for soiling her pants. As a noun, the word abuse falls into three categories. Substance abuse means the improper use of something. It can be many things. For instance, to misuse, misapply, misemploy, mishandle any substance in order to help you feel better. This could include food, cigarettes, shopping, the exploitation of children, women, men, or animals for pleasure, perversion, such as pornography, the excessive and uncontrollable use of alcohol and drugs, even prescription drugs, is substance abuse, or rather can be substance abuse. Remember that substance abuse is the excessive misuse of a certain thing, and therefore it could be virtually anything. Physical abuse is the cruel and violent treatment of a person or animal. Mistreatment, maltreatment, ill-treatment of any living creature, whether it be a child, adult, the elderly, or even an animal. Misuse or ill use of a person such as a child, adult, or animal. Rough treatment, like shoving a child or elderly person who moves too slow, giving someone a black eye or a slap through the face, or even to be spat on. Those are all physical abuse. Verbal abuse is to engage in insulting and offensive language, to insult a person, to pronounce curses, to defame a person's character, to insult using swear words, swearing to do something to a person, to swear at a person, calling them belittling names, threatening them in any way is verbal abuse. So as you can see, the definition of the word abuse is very simple. The meaning of abuse is not so clear. Abuse is when one person purposefully hurts another. But that is a common occurrence in life, and most of us are guilty in participating in some or other form of abuse from time to time, if we're very honest. But what abuse really is, it's all about control. When a truly abusive situation exists, it's because one person is trying to control the other through abuse. And while this might be an explanation of abuse, it's certainly no excuse. No person has no right to exercise control over another through abuse. Victims of abuse should know that the abuse is wrong and that the abuse is never their fault. But sadly, they don't. Victims of abuse stay in abusive relationships because if they are children, they actually have no way out. If no adult person ever notices the abuse of a child and intervenes, the child will stay in this abusive relationship with dire consequences for their personality formation and emotional development. When an adult person stays in an abusive relationship, it's because in their mind they truly see no way out. There can often be very real and constructive reasons, such as children, finances, housing, and religious views, keeping an adult person trapped in an abusive relationship. There are many different forms of abusive relationships, but my focus is on the personality disorder of narcissistic abuse and also the emotional disorder of codependency because they attract one another. For this specific program, I'm addressing the different types of abuse because more often than not, people don't even know or don't even think that they are being abused. So physical abuse, when you hear the word abuse, what's the first thing you think of? For most people, that would be physical abuse, but not for everyone. Physical abuse can take the form of being punched, kicked, slapped, strangled, shoved, or many identical forms of forced physical contact. Believe it or not, physical abuse can also include neglect or abandonment because it deals with the physical aspects. Physical abuse can also include being restrained against your will, something like being locked in a house or a room, or the invasion of your own personal space, like having your phone or laptop or handbag, or even your diary checked forcibly. The violence of this nature can often lead to severe injuries, hospitalization, or at worst, even death. This is, of course, the commonly reported form of domestic violence, probably because there are evidence like marks on the body and broken items. Verbal abuse. This form of abuse can be very loud and aggressive, or it can be very quiet and subtle. Verbal attacks include shouting insults or blatant outward lies. Yes, lies are verbal abuse because they are absolutely, usually pathological and designed to break down your reserves. Verbal abuse is used to make you think you're crazy. This can also be called gaslighting. If you know something true about your abuser and it includes negative aspects about the abuser, they will do whatever it takes to make you feel as though you imagined the whole thing. And this often overlaps with mental abuse. Now, mental abuse of this caliber can often isolate the victim so badly that there will be very few people, if any, who believe what they're going through. Mental or psychological abuse can also come in the form of gaslighting. In other words, making you think you're crazy, but it can also do so much more damage than just taint your reputation. Mental abuse includes lies when the truth is right in front of your face, and these can weigh down your mental capacity. Those who are already battling mental illness can become progressively worse when dealing with mental abuse in a relationship. Someone can tell you lies for so long that even you believe them yourself. That's why this sort of abuse is so damaging. It turns you against your own logic, which can be devastating. It can even turn others against you and make them see your abuser as being the good guy. Now, sexual abuse. Did you know that sexual abuse can happen in a relationship? Yes, most definitely. Rape can occur as well. If either partner does not want to engage in intimate relations, but she or he is otherwise forced to do so, this is considered rape and abuse. While sexual abuse can be a physical act, it can also overlap with emotional and mental abuse. Using sex as a way to get what you want, to assign value to your partner, or to insult them is also considered sexual abuse. Intimacy was designed to do many positive things, but unfortunately it can be twisted into an unspeakable form of abuse, whether married or unmarried, and even in other related forms. Emotional abuse. Although similar to mental abuse, with some overlapping, emotional abuse has more to do with the feelings rather than the thinking. With this type of abuse, the victim's feelings are often ignored when they don't match up with what the partner feels. Control is a huge part of emotional abuse, where the one partner tries to have the domination over every aspect of the partner's life. Control in emotional abuse can include financial control, where the partner isn't allowed to work or even to have a bank account of their own, or they are forced to have a joint account. Sometimes this control develops due to past circumstances or jealousy, but it is still emotional abuse. Other forms of emotional abuse involve making your partner feel worthless with insults and neglect. This includes racism, sexism, or making jokes about someone's native language or even their body. Most of the time, people outside of the relationship have no idea that any of this is going on until it becomes very severe. The abuse of addiction. The reason I mention this type of abuse here is that it impacts on more people than just the person who is caught in scripts. Alcoholism or drug abuse damages the user's family, and many others who may be around the user. In your relationship, if your partner is addicted to alcohol or drugs or even other things, it's advisable to seek professional help. Addiction tends to be extremely difficult type of abuse to conquer. It's fairly easy to recognize the types of abuse behavior when you are familiar with the categories of abuse that I mentioned here. If you're experiencing physical discomfort, it could be physical or sexual abuse. If you're starting to think that you're worthless, or if you are thinking a lot about suicide, you could be experiencing a number of these types of abuse. You see, all types of abuse overlap somewhere, so there could be symptoms of more than one type going on in your life. One way to discover whether or not you're being abused is if you've been labeled as crazy by your loved one. This label often masks all the other symptoms of abuse, and it's hard to get to the truth when you are gaslighted. If you've been told that you're crazy, this is a red flag. Seek help immediately to discover the truth of your relationship. Any relationship that does not give you the freedom and safety of self-expression, where you have to walk on eggs all the time, is toxic, and you need help. So now, of course, you may realize that you are being abused. The question is, of course, how do you stop it? The answer is simple. Get away to some safe place. Tell someone that you know that you can trust about the abuse, but do not act impulsively. Take your time to plan when and how you can get away safely. Seek out counsel from your local church, healthcare practitioner, or even a social worker. You will need all the help you can to get away, and more importantly, to stay away from the abuser. As we go along, we will look into why some people get caught up in abusive relationships and why they stay in these toxic relationships. I hope this has given you something to think about and to recognize if there are signs of abuse in your relationships. So I leave you with this precious thought that if you have the faith of a mustard seed, nothing will be impossible for you. Marinda Summerton is saying,